Galileo Galilei, the man who moved the earth. In 1633, an aging scientist stood before one of the most powerful institutions on earth. Exhausted, ill, and under enormous pressure, he faced accusations that his ideas contradicted sacred truth itself. His crime was defending the claim that the earth moves around the sun. The man was Galileo Galilei, and with a telescope pointed toward the night sky, he helped destroy one of humanity's oldest illusions. This is the story of the rebel who changed human thought forever. Born in 1564 in Pisa, Italy, Galileo entered a world ruled by authority. For centuries, knowledge had been inherited rather than tested. Ancient thinkers like Aristotle shaped science, philosophy, and education across Europe. Their words carried immense weight, and questioning them was often seen as dangerous. Most people believed the heavens were perfect. Earth stood motionless at the center of creation, while the sun, planets, and stars revolved around it in divine order. To challenge that worldview was not simply intellectual rebellion. It threatened the philosophical and religious foundations of society itself. Galileo grew up in a household that encouraged skepticism. His father, Vincenzo Galilei, was a musician and thinker who distrusted blind obedience to tradition. That spirit shaped Galileo from an early age. As a young man, he was sent to study medicine at the University of Pisa because medicine promised status and financial security. But Galileo became fascinated by mathematics instead. To him, numbers seemed more reliable than inherited authority. One story tells of Galileo sitting inside a cathedral, watching a hanging lamp swing gently from the ceiling. He noticed something strange. The lamp appeared to maintain a consistent rhythm no matter how wide its swing became. Most people would have ignored the moment entirely, but Galileo investigated it. That simple observation reflected a revolutionary idea. Nature follows laws, and those laws can be discovered through observation and measurement rather than tradition alone. Today, that idea seems obvious. At the time, it was dangerous. Galileo soon began openly challenging Aristotle himself. According to Aristotelian physics, heavier objects should fall faster than lighter ones. Galileo doubted it. Legend says he climbed the Leaning Tower of Pisa and dropped objects of different masses from the top. They struck the ground almost together. Whether the story literally happened or not, the message captured Galileo's philosophy perfectly. Truth should not come from ancient authority. It should come from experiment. For perhaps the first time in European history, a scientist was publicly insisting, "Do not ask what old thinkers believed. Ask what reality reveals." Galileo's ideas were radical, but he was only beginning. In 1609, news reached Italy of a strange Dutch invention, a device capable of magnifying distant objects, the telescope. Galileo immediately began building improved versions of his own, refining them until they became far more powerful than anything previously seen. Then one night he pointed the telescope toward the heavens. What Galileo saw changed humanity forever. The moon was not smooth and perfect as generations had believed. It contained mountains, valleys, and shadows. The heavens themselves were imperfect. Then came an even greater shock. Galileo discovered 4 moons orbiting Jupiter. That single observation struck at the heart of the old world view. If moons could orbit another planet, then not everything revolved around Earth. Soon afterward, Galileo observed the phases of Venus, providing powerful evidence that Venus orbited the sun. For generations, humanity believed the universe revolved around them. Now, for the first time, that certainty began to crack. Nearly a century earlier, the astronomer Nicholas Copernicus had proposed a radical possibility. Earth itself moved around the sun. Most scholars rejected the theory, but Galileo had discovered observational evidence supporting it. This changed more than astronomy. It changed humanity's relationship with truth itself. The cosmos was no longer understood only through philosophy or inherited belief. Observation had entered the center of human knowledge. Earth was no longer the unmoving center of creation. It became one world among many, moving through a vast and mysterious universe. Galileo published his discoveries, and Europe erupted with fascination. Some celebrated him as a genius. Others viewed him as deeply dangerous, because Galileo's discoveries challenged more than astronomy. They challenged authority itself. If centuries of accepted wisdom could be wrong, then what else might be wrong? At first, church authorities tolerated much of Galileo's work, but tensions grew as his public defense of heliocentrism became more direct. The issue was not simply science versus religion, as it is often portrayed today. Religion, politics, philosophy, and social order were tightly intertwined in 17th century Europe. To many leaders, challenging the structure of the cosmos threatened the stability of society itself. In 1616, Galileo was formally warned not to publicly defend heliocentrism as physical truth. For a time, he remained cautious, but Galileo believed evidence could not remain silent forever. Years later, he published the book that would change his life forever: Dialogue Concerning the Two Chief World Systems. Officially, the book presented a balanced debate between competing models of the universe. In reality, readers quickly understood its true message. It was a brilliant and devastating defense of heliocentrism. Worse still, supporters of the older geocentric worldview often appeared weak or foolish within its pages. The reaction was swift. Galileo was summoned to Rome and placed on trial before the Inquisition. By then, he was nearly 70 years old. The once celebrated scientist now stood isolated before one of the most powerful institutions in the world. Under immense pressure and threatened with severe punishment, Galileo finally recanted. Publicly, he denied defending the motion of the Earth around the sun. It was one of history's great intellectual tragedies, a man who had seen the evidence forced to deny it. According to legend, after his recantation, Galileo quietly whispered, "And yet it moves." Whether he truly spoke those words remains uncertain, but history proved them true. Galileo spent the remainder of his life under house arrest. Yet even in confinement, his mind remained active. He continued studying motion, mathematics, and gravity, developing ideas that would later influence Isaac Newton and help shape the foundations of modern physics. Eventually, Galileo lost his sight completely. The man who revealed the heavens could no longer see them. But by then, it no longer mattered. He had already transformed humanity forever. Galileo's greatest contribution was not merely discovering moons or defending heliocentrism. It was teaching humanity how to think. Before Galileo, truth often belonged to authority. After Galileo, truth increasingly belonged to evidence. Observation, measurement, experimentation, questioning, and repeatability became the core principles of the scientific method. These principles transformed physics, astronomy, engineering, medicine, and eventually the modern world itself. But Galileo's deepest legacy was philosophical. He forced humanity to confront a painful reality. We are not the center of the universe. And yet, through reason and curiosity, we can still understand it. That idea changed human thought forever. Today, Galileo stands as more than a scientist. He represents intellectual courage, the willingness to question inherited truths and follow evidence wherever it leads, even at great personal cost. Because every age has its authorities, every era has its unquestioned beliefs. And progress often begins with one person willing to look through the telescope and refuse to deny what they see. Galileo lost his freedom, but he helped liberate the human mind. And that is why, centuries later, the rebel from Pisa still matters.